Bueno, buenas tardes. Los invito primero a conocer el grupo que hace esta reunión de hoy. Nosotros somos la mesa de trabajo de la Universidad Motorizada de Cali. Esta mesa de trabajo de Movilidad Motorizada de Cali la conforma la Universidad del Valle, la Escuela de Salud Pública de la Universidad del Valle, cabeza de la profesora doctora Mosquera. La Organización de la Ciudad Verde es una organización nacional que trabaja por el desarrollo sostenible en las ciudades y la represento yo, asesores. Los colectivos de ciclistas, que son cicloamigos, también es donde tenemos estudiantes que están representando cicloamigos, electricidad bici, mujeres Cali, hemorraiders y bueno, y todos los colectivos los reúnen una red ciudadana de ciclismo que nació en el mundial de la bicicleta hace 2 semanas, que se llama la Bicicleta Colombia. Todos los colectivos de ciclistas lo hacen una bicicleta de Cali y hace parte de este grupo organizado nacional. Dentro de la mesa tenemos varias líneas de trabajo. Trabajamos, como ya es lo que se han podido dar cuenta, por la bicicleta como medio de transporte en la ciudad. Hemos hecho un trabajo desde el punto de vista técnico en el desarrollo del sport y todo lo que tiene que ver con el uso de la bicicleta en la ciudad. Hemos hecho intervenciones ciudadanas, los colectivos ciclistas son muy fuertes en el tema de las intervenciones desarrolladas por la ciudad. Estamos ya consolidando el observatorio de ciclistas y de peatón, que es el órgano que nos va a dar toda la información de cómo se está manejando el ciclista y peatón en la ciudad. Pues, en ese momento le llegará la invitación para el lanzamiento del observatorio. Estamos también trabajando en un proyecto muy bonito que paso hago en anuncio parroquial. El 19 de marzo vamos a tener nuestro primer andar en la ciudad. Andar en la ciudad es un proyecto también de la mesa mundial motorizada, donde vamos a ir a recorrer partes de la ciudad donde la situación peatonal y la vamos a recorrer, vamos a hacer unos insumos de cómo se comporta la actividad peatonal en esa zona. Vamos a llevar un registro fotográfico y de video. Bueno, vamos a empezar el 19 de marzo para los que estén interesados a las 5 de la tarde en el Palacio de vamos a hacer el correo. También tenemos otro proyecto que se llama el Colegio Bici. Este proyecto lo lideran los colectivos ciclistas. La idea es que empecemos a hacer 2 pilotos, uno en el Colegio San Fernando y otro en el Colegio de Nuevo y que podamos empezar a generar todo esto que ya se ha generado en otras ciudades como Medellín o Bogotá, que es empezar con los pelados a ver qué parte sacar en la ciudad. Bueno, yo creo que eso en líneas generales lo que hacemos en la mesa de trabajo de movilidad motorizado. Los invitamos, la mesa se reúne los lunes cada 15 lunes para que los que estén interesados puedan participar. Tenemos hoy la fortuna de tener con nosotros a Luc Nadal, es el director técnico de desarrollo urbano de este, viene a hablarnos un poco del futuro de la ciudad en términos de desarrollo urbano. Y bueno, tenemos pues una presentación muy interesante que ha hecho con el Banco Mundial, con la Fundación Cómo, y bueno, es lo que vamos a hacer hoy. Quería preguntar quién necesita, ¿todos saben inglés? Sí, ¿verdad? No, yo no me hagas con que sí. Mira, ¿qué prefieren? ¿Traducción? Pues yo puedo traducir, pero no perfectamente. I will try to translate.
Buenos días, gracias a todos por venir aquí hoy. Mi español es muy poco, so hablar inglés. is Luc Nadal, and I'm the Technical Director for Urban Development at the Institute for Transport and Development Policy, or ITDP, IPDP. ITDP is a non-profit, non-governmental organization that has existed for almost 30 years. It's actually our 30th anniversary this year. And we started very small, collecting used bicycles and sending them in the US, in the United States, and sending them by containers to Nicaragua, where there was war at the time, to distribute to nurses and teachers and so on and so forth. And from the inception, the purpose, the mission of ITDP is to promote what we call sustainable transport, which include walking, cycling, and using all kinds of collective vehicles, as opposed to driving alone in one car or on a motorcycle.
Bueno, como ya les había dicho, su nombre es Luc Nadal, él es el director técnico de desarrollo urbano del ITDP. El ITDP es el Instituto de Transporte el Instituto de la Política de Transporte y Desarrollo. Es una organización no gubernamental fundada en 1985. Empezó en los Estados Unidos siendo algo muy pequeño y digamos que su objetivo primordial es promover un desarrollo urbano más sostenible, más equitativo y se enfoca mucho en el transporte público, en todo el tema de peatón y ciclismo urbano.
And over 30 years, we grew to an organization of about 100 permanent staff in a dozen different countries. We have head offices in those yellow star cities and projects in the red dot cities.
ITDP trabaja en 100 países, tienen en todos los sitios donde está la ruedita, tienen sedes, pero tienen oficinas fijas en donde están las estrellas.
So we worked in projects in China, like this very large BRT. This is a system that runs on 23 kilometers on one corridor and transports more than 800,000 people every day.
Ellos trabajan en China, donde hay un sistema de transporte público muy grande. Al diario tienen 800,000 usuarios que andan en el transporte público en toda la ciudad.
We have a number of topics on many topics of interest for people who are interested in sustainable urban development, especially around promoting PRT, promoting cycling and bicycle sharing, and many other publications. So please check out our website. These publications are
Ellos tienen muchas publicaciones que son parte de las publicaciones, están ahí en la diapositiva. Muchas de las publicaciones hablan sobre el sistema de transporte público y bicicletas compartidas. Algunas de ellas están traducidas al español, o sea que pueden entrar a revisar las traducciones.
My own work is about promoting what we call transit-oriented development. That is urban development that works together and that supports good public transport systems. And this essentially means a city that is walkable, because obviously public transport cannot exist without people accessing the stations.
Su experticia en el ITDP tiene que ver con algo que se llama TOD, pues se va a traducir a desarrollo orientado por el tránsito. Desarrollo orientado por el tránsito, y la idea es que ellos se enfocan en hacer unos estudios en transporte, pero teniendo en cuenta que las ciudades siempre deben siempre deben tener la posibilidad de caminar en ellas.
And I think transit is a little ambiguous in Spanish, it means traffic.
Sí,
But we're talking about public transport.
sí, en el transporte público.
All right. So let me go to this. The Ford Foundation asked us to come to Cali and to, in order to help them make their decisions about priorities for funding programs. They asked us to come and to look at the prospect for equitable public transport-oriented development in Cali.
La Fundación Ford dio unos recursos para que pudieran ellos hacer aquí en Cali todo el tema de la proyección del transporte público en la ciudad.
So there are three main aspects. We're talking at a very high level here. There are three main aspects to this question: equity in public transport-oriented development, urban development. Promoting the city that is walkable, that is cycle-friendly, and that is easy to travel through by public transport is inherently poor, since these systems or these modes of transport are accessible to almost all. Public transport sometimes is too expensive for some of the poorest people, but it's accessible to most people. And walking is like cycling is accessible to almost everybody. So that's one consideration. The second one is that every city, and Cali in particular, needs policies that promote the delivery of a large number of affordable housing options for people who have low income. So we need to look into that. And third, and the most challenging of all, is the promotion of a city. I'll let you speak. And I'm just finishing with this one. And so the third one is getting to integrating different levels of income in the same neighborhood, which is the ideal of the integrated city. That's obviously a challenge in terms of implementation and getting the policies accepted, voted in. But this is part of the overarching goal.
Bueno, tiene tres aspectos. El primer aspecto tiene que ver con la equidad en el desarrollo del transporte público, que también además sea accesible para el peatón y el ciclista. Y generalmente esto tiene como una interpretación que es solamente para las personas de escasos recursos. Sin embargo, pues las tres cosas que acabo de mencionar es en términos generales como política, es para todo el mundo y debería ser para todo el mundo. El segundo aspecto es promover desarrollos urbanos en los barrios deseables, o sea, que debería de haber la posibilidad de promover un desarrollo en los barrios donde se quiere vivir. Y el tercero, yo no entiendo muy bien, pero es como promover
un desarrollo urbano más integrado combinando incorporaciones de ingresos, los ingresos. Se mezcla con los ingresos, la más aceleración socioespacial.
De diferentes lados, de diferentes ingresos.
So, I don't know if you see this very well, but this is an image of Cali by Google Earth, and what's fantastic about Cali is that it's an extremely dense and compact city by international standards. Everywhere around the world, you will see suburbs sprawling out on the edge of the city. We have a little bit of this in the south of Cali, and poor industrially oriented total jungle. But in the main, Cali is very compact and contained. The footprint of the city comparatively is very small, and that's a huge asset in order to develop the city that is transit-oriented, that is walkable, and that is cyclable. And Cali can be contained mostly in a circle of 15 kilometers diameter. Very compact. Let's compare with some other cities of the same population, more or less, the same range. Atlanta, Georgia, in the US, 2.5 million people, it's about the same as Cali. This huge footprint. Barcelona, slightly higher population, and a similar footprint, just a little bit larger. This is Barcelona by Google Earth, same scale, same high altitude as the view of Cali before. Here's the 15-kilometer circle over Barcelona. So Barcelona is even more extended than Cali for similar population. You need to translate all this?
Bueno,
Go back.
Como vemos aquí en este Google Earth, esa es la imagen de Cali. Cali, para decir una cosa muy positiva, y es que es densa y compacta. Solamente en la parte sur de la ciudad se ve algo que se dice en los suburbios, pues, por decirlo de alguna manera. Pero es una ciudad que ya de por sí su naturaleza da para que sea muy positiva para el ciclista del peatón. Comparada con otras ciudades como Atlanta y Barcelona, donde es más o menos la misma dimensión y Barcelona tiene un poquito más de personas, se puede ver que hay una gran diferencia, ¿no? Y es ya iba a hablar del tema de Barcelona.
This is Atlanta. You see all these are not forests, right? These are green leaf suburbs, and there's a network of streets and suburban houses all over the place, and this leaks out of the frame. Cali was about this size, all of Cali, same population. Atlanta spreads over and beyond the edges of this picture.
La comparación con Atlanta es que teniendo más o menos la misma población, un poco más, Atlanta se ha desarrollado a todo alrededor de la ciudad. Entonces los suburbios han ido hacia la parte de los bosques y de las zonas verdes, mientras que Cali es este pedacito y ahí se ha quedado por el momento.
The difference, of course, is that Atlanta, it's impossible to live in Atlanta without owning and driving a car every day. Barcelona, I'm sure you all know Barcelona, very compact, extremely high quality of life, very excellent public transit system, very walkable neighborhoods. This is the model that I promote.
Atlanta vivir en Atlanta es imposible si tú no tienes carro. Necesitas el carro para poder andar por la ciudad, para poder ir de un sitio a otro en la ciudad. La diferencia con Barcelona es que Barcelona tiene un sistema de transporte público muy eficiente y tienes pues corredores donde puedes hacer ciclismo y donde los peatones pueden andar. Entonces la diferencia entre los dos sistemas es muy diferente, desde el desarrollo es muy diferente. Él promueve la que se hace en Barcelona.
So what about Cali? Cali, we have a little of sprawl in the south. We have sprawl in the north. We're not sure yet, but there might be extension in the Navarro floodplain coming. And thank goodness there was an urban motorway project that was cancelled recently that would have essentially put in jeopardy the potential of Cali to become the city of the future that is oriented toward sustainable transport. but instead encourage growth in the sprawling parts and ruining the conditions of life in the center.
Cali está expandiéndose hacia el sur, hacia el norte, en el área de Navarro, y gracias a Dios se canceló el proyecto de la autopista del Centenario, porque eso hubiera hecho que se hubiera, como decir, roto la ciudad y hubiera evitado que la ciudad fuera una ciudad desarrollada para un futuro, que es lo que se espera que sea pronto, que se dé pronto.
Right. Destroying the capacity of Cali to be the sustainable city of the future. But the Green Corridor project, I think, has done a lot to turn this around, at least in terms of the concept. And I think that's phenomenal. And this Green Corridor project has also attracted a lot of international attention to Cali as a potential best practice that can be observed, documented, and presented to other cities around the world as a model on how to not develop around new motorways, but develop around green corridors.
Cali se está pensando como la ciudad de desarrollo sostenible del futuro. El proyecto del Corredor Verde ha despertado interés a nivel internacional como modelo de desarrollo en el mundo, ya que va a ofrecer unos corredores verdes muy interesantes atravesando la ciudad.
So now the issue is, of course, not just a wonderful concept, but also implementation. So how do you go from these ideas, these beautiful ideas, to reality? I don't have all the answers. I've only been in Cali for a few days. So when it comes to equitable transit-oriented development, in Cali, I have identified 4 different approaches. The first one is city center urban renewal techniques, and the best example of that, or the main example, not necessarily best, the main example of this is Ciudad Paraíso project. Are you all familiar with that?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Second, I think there's a fantastic potential for a growth in Cali on the existing footprint of the city through the self-densification of existing neighborhoods. And that's a phenomenon that's already existing and that has issues in terms of safety, in terms of environmental consequences, but these can be improved, and there's a great potential in compact self-densification. Do you want to translate these 2 questions?
I will translate number 1 because number 2 I didn't understand.
Okay, so I'll repeat.
El primero, hay algunas perspectivas, algunas proyecciones en el TOD para Cali. El primero es la renovación del centro de la ciudad. Él piensa que es muy importante empezar a renovar el centro de la ciudad para poder desarrollar centros de desarrollo. El segundo no lo entendí, ¿vos lo entendiste?
Que hay un proceso de, yo creo que los arquitectos que están saben de eso mejor, es que hay un proceso de autodensificación, la gente construye sobre las casas aquí en Cali, donde la ciudad se vuelve densa por sí misma. ¿Sí? O sea, tú sabes que hay el primer piso, luego una que la gente sigue construyendo hasta arriba. Se lo hace que la ciudad se vuelva cada vez más compacta.
Excellent. So the third category of urban growth in Cali is the greenfield urban extension, especially in the South Door. There's a zone of expansion area of the expansion. So this is currently happening. It's not reversible. I'll go into this later, but greenfield expansion is not something that we support as long as there is potential to develop compactly inside the city. But this extension already exists. It's been approved and partly developed. So Cali has to deal with it and make sure that it's developed in a way that is as sustainable as possible.
¿Ese es Navarro?
No, cañas gordas and las...
No, yo sí, voy a contar más o menos.
Cali has a green extension inside the building, right? But the planning or the greenfield urban extension, more of that is part of another municipio, another cities.
Okay.
Right? It's not private land.
What I would call the part that is in Cali also greenfield, because it is the development of land that was never developed before. So there's Navarro, but there's also the what's along the autopista.
So generally, we're talking about the green extension around Cali, right?
Where? Around Cali.
Part of that is the extension inside the building. The south piece in the building, the part between Mundial and Cali, right? It's part of Cali land.
Some of it is on Cali,
yeah,
and some of it is in Abundi.
Yeah, but the other part is Palmira, Candelaria, Amundi. Not part of Cali.
Okay, understood. So we'll go over some more details. Did I cover? So 4 categories, and the first one is the green corridor, and we think this is a potential best practice. So first, let's look at the city center urban renewal, the Ciudad Paraíso project. It's a very large project that covers many blocks, many city blocks. There's some beautiful renderings. We don't know if that's an image of the future or if it's just a commercial image to sell the project. But what we see, of course, is a big divide between the new and the old. Perhaps issues of connection between the two, both physical and social. Who's going to be able to afford the new apartments? Who's staying in the old urban fabric? Would like to translate.
Nos está mostrando aquí el proyecto de la Ciudad Paraíso, donde se cubren muchas cuadras y vemos una gran división entre lo viejo y lo nuevo, con unas diferencias económicas y sociales muy intensas.
This is a planning approach that was popular in the US and in Europe in the mid-20th century, where the middle of the 20th century, where cities were very concerned about what they saw as slums. Degraded area was not strong, where social problem concentrated, and the response was to wipe out, to suppress these neighborhoods, and to build something completely new, and to displace the people and spread them around different places. There's been a lot of criticism of these approaches, at least from 1960. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the work of Jane Jacobs, an author of urban theory. She was a journalist, really, but she sort of revolutionized the discourse of urban planning in America at that time, really criticizing this approach of very large-scale redevelopment. Maybe I should start.
Esto era un modelo, este fue un modelo de desarrollo que fue muy común en Estados Unidos y Europa a mitad del siglo XXI, donde la economía no era necesariamente muy fuerte, había muchos problemas sociales. Generalmente cuando hacían este tipo de proyectos había desplazamiento forzoso, lo que lo hizo muy polémico en su momento y en 1960 y muy criticado en los 60. Can you repeat the name of the author?
The author is Jane Jacobs.
Hubo una persona que lideró, digamos, todo este proceso en contra de este tipo de desarrollos que están llamada Jane Jacobs. She was American.
She was American.
Una norteamericana.
So you know these views. What I would say is that if some of the streets of this area of San Pasquale are really degraded, some of the buildings are very degraded, and the streets poorly maintained, and so on and so forth. This is not the case all over the place, and there are nice houses and people who live there actually. Some streets are, you could be in Cartagena or in, in Santo Antonio in Cali, this beautifully rehabilitated neighborhood. So the question is, does this need to be demolished? Do these people need to be moved out? That's a question.
Algunas de las calles, como las que acabamos de ver en la pasada, son del barrio San Pascual, tienen muchos problemas de infraestructura y demás, pero este no es el problema general de todo el barrio. Entonces nos muestra a nosotros otras diapositivas donde las calles están mantenidas.
La pregunta es si es necesario demoler todo eso.
Perdón, y es necesario demoler todo, sabiendo que hay partes de las que se pueden sacar.
Porque la propuesta de la administración es demoler, ¿cierto? Para que sea para eso.
Sí.
En la foto anterior de un paso que hay la atención de
Es necesario.
They're talking about they're going to demolish all the neighborhood.
La salida del 19 de marzo de andar la ciudad, vamos a hacer ese recorrido para conocer la ciudad para eso. En andar la ciudad de una puña.
Part of the group is concerned about what is going to happen because they are going to demolish all the neighborhood.
That's my concern, I share.
También es una cosa que le preocupa.
So my recommendation in this kind of situation is to prioritize a finer grain of redevelopment. And the strategy that is based on infill projects. So infills means that you take plot by plot or maybe consolidate just a few plots and build smaller size projects while keeping the buildings that are good, the buildings that are inhabited more or less happily by people. They may need upgrade, but they don't need to be demolished.
No entendí esta parte, pero lo que entendí esta parte es no necesariamente hay que tumbar todo, sino que se puede recuperar la parte que es recuperable y en vez de hacer un proyecto grande, empezar a hacer proyectos como por partes, conservando lo que se puede dejar. Esto si no tengo ni idea que será con el reino. ¿Alguien sabe?
Final grain, even not big but small. Small is beautiful. Small project.
Es que los proyectos pequeños son bellos, los proyectos grandes ya pierden su charme.
So this is just to illustrate. This is from Bordeaux in France, and just to illustrate the idea that you can build new buildings that are smaller scale. This is not very poor, but not very rich area of Bordeaux either. But it's dense enough that they have transit, but the buildings in poor condition can be demolished and replaced, but not the whole neighborhood. Yes.
Este es un ejemplo de instancia en Bordeaux, donde podemos ver que hay nuevos edificios al lado de antiguos edificios. Y lo que han hecho es que han hecho lo que nos acaba de decir, proyectos pequeños donde incluso han metido el transporte público y pues, se ha desarrollado en pequeños proyectos. No es una ciudad, no es un sitio muy pobre ni rico.
Okay, now let me move to the compact self-densification phenomenon in Cali, which is very important. And what do we see here is that very low buildings get torn down or added to and become four-story buildings. And in this way, a lot of space for people who are not very rich, it can be created. Dwelling units, viviendas, places to live, at a very low cost and especially for the government. So that's a phenomenon that has the potential to house adequately tens of thousands of people, many more people than can be housed in the Ciudad Paraíso project.
Bueno, lo que entendí. Este es como el ejemplo que está pasando en este momento en Cali, o que se ve en Cali, que era lo que decía ahorita Janet, que entonces van subiendo, van haciendo su piso superior y otro piso, entonces es como se van autodensificando.
Que eso baja costos y ayuda
más económico para el sector público, digamos, que iniciar un tipo de proyecto así y densificaría mucho más gente de lo que podría hacer, digamos, en Ciudad Paraíso, ese gran proyecto.
It's more economical, it's also more feasible. It just happens almost spontaneously. It does happen spontaneously. The government doesn't have to create plans and get legislation and get financing, and it just happens and it works. So it's a very important phenomenon that needs to be taken into account and that needs to be helped, encouraged, but also provided the support it needs, because it's just fine to self-build, but if it's not well built and there's an earthquake? What if the sewers are not enough to take in all the wastewater, and so on and so forth? So the government needs to invest in this phenomenon, but first they have to understand that it exists and take it into account into the policies that they design for housing the people that need housing in Cali.
Bueno, bueno, vuelvo y digo lo mismo. Esto es una manera económica y de hacerlo, y pasa de manera espontánea. El gobierno no tendría que invertir muchísimo para hacer que esto suceda, pero sí debería tener algo, tendría que invertir algo como si se va a generar este tipo de promoción, cómo se debe hacer bien para que no queden pues, mal construidas, que no se remojen, les traigan a casa y demás.
So some more images of this phenomenon happening all over the city. So a few considerations that need to be integrated in the public policy of the city. Infrastructure, the sufficient infrastructure needs to be provided: water, sewers, storm water drainage, the proper structures, proper structural work that need to be applied to this construction. So there should be a training of the people who do self-construction, training of the local contractors that pour the concrete and do these things. Further, you want these neighborhoods to be very walkable. There's no space for cars there anyway in Agua Blanca, in these parts. So you want them to keep very walkable. You want the urban system to support walking, including having very short blocks, city blocks, so they don't constitute barriers to walking. Right? So a very tight grid of streets is very important, small blocks. And then they need all the public and civic facilities, the equipment, right? The schools, the parks, the clinics that can satisfy that added population in these neighborhoods. So upgrading the public systems.
La autodensificación debe ser objeto de política pública. Los barrios deben tener, digamos, estas son las necesidades que se deberían de cubrir. Primero, tener una buena infraestructura, el tema pues, de acueducto, alcantarillado, aguas negras, aguas lluvias, todo eso. Luego, en la parte estructural, debe tener pequeñas cuadras. ¿Por qué? Porque estos barrios deberían de pensarse solamente en el tema peatonal y deberían ser pequeñas cuadras para poder que los peatones puedan andar bien. El sistema urbano debe promover cuadras pequeñas, no es lo mismo. Y tener facilidades o sitios públicos y cívicos donde les quede cerca, como colegios, parques, clínicas, etc. Antes.
Oh, what's very important is also to get visibility to these programs. I think Cali does a lot of good work in this sense. In Potrero Grande, there's a new civic center. I can't remember the name of it exactly. That's pretty impressive work. There are all sorts of activities for the youth there, computer training programs, art programs, dance schools, and so on and so forth. Really amazing. So there's a really need to see public institutions that provide all kinds of services for the people in a way that's very visible. That also has an architectural presence, like a physical presence that represents that transformation of the neighborhood. Medellín has done that very well, actually.
Es interesante cómo Cali de una u otra manera lo ha hecho bien. Un ejemplo que pone es el centro cívico de Puerto Grande. ¿Alguien sabe cómo se llama?
El Centro Tecnológico Valle del Pacífico.
¿Cómo?
El Centro Tecnológico Valle del Pacífico, ¿no?
Es el del
Sí,
SENA,
pero
¿verdad? Bueno, que se llama el Centro Tecnológico Valle del Pacífico. Entonces lo que dice es que es importante cómo el gobierno ha invertido en este tipo de construcciones, no solamente porque da tecnología, educación y demás, sino además porque arquitectónicamente es agradable para lo que lo rodea.
Okay, third category now, which is the planning for the urban extensions. So we have here on this map, we have the urban extension that is that is part of the POT, right? So we at ITDP, we think that in many cities that are growing fast, at some point there is need for urban extensions over greenfields on new land. However, we're not sure that Cali needed that at this moment, because Cali has a lot of land that can be redeveloped in the center along the green corridor. But this particular urban expansion is already approved. It's part of the POT. It was part of the previous POT, I think. So it's not reversible. It's not possible to just go back. So it has to be dealt with in terms of the right planning concepts.
¿Cómo se dice? ¿Es el título? Planeación para la extensión urbana. Él dice que el desarrollo en nueva tierra no es necesariamente lo ideal en este momento. Igual pues ya está en el POT y la idea es que pues, se va a desarrollar. Lo importante es que se debería hacer de una manera organizada y como bien desarrollada para no tenernos que ir pues, a las zonas pues, que son los municipios vecinos, ¿no? A lo que se refiere. Por lo que yo
de la ciudad.
O sea, no llegar a extender mucho más la ciudad por los costos políticos, sociales, por eso la extensión de la ciudad. Y no se sabe si cuándo es el momento oportuno para hacer eso de expansión urbana. En Cali dice, hablamos sobre que ese es el momento oportuno para hacer esa expansión.
Sí, él lo dice, pero no la
quería centrarse más bien en cómo se las zonas aledañas al corredor verde.
Sí, él lo que dice es que se deberían empezar a pensar en zonas como la del corredor verde, dinamizar todas esas zonas que no se usan en vez de estar expandiéndonos pues, a los lados.
I'm not sure what you said, but no.
Neither do I.
Okay, so this expansion is irreversible. We cannot go back because there's already all kinds of plans, all kind of constructions that is happening.
Son tierras de estrato que los 5, 6, 6. Esas son las expansiones superficiales.
Eso se hace a través de un plan parcial y el plan parcial
Definen después qué es
de todos los tipos de vivienda. Seguramente estratos individuales, también se encuentra vivienda diferente.
Yeah, we are talking that. Can you
Go back.
They are talking that in the future, here they're going to be everyone, like from poor people and wealthy people, they're going to be in the same.
Mm-hmm. So it's going to be socially integrated.
It's
Yeah, I understand that the POT has some provisions that new development needs to set aside 20% of the floor area that's for housing. So 80% can be market rate, 20% has to be VIP, which means very low income housing.
20% está destinado para
So that's an excellent policy. That's a very good beginning.
20% destinado para el interés social.
So it's 20% of the housing part of the development. It's not 20% of all the development. And that's national. That's actually national regulation. But Cali's POT has added provision that 15% of all the development needs to be social housing. So that's better because of part of the development is not housing. So 15% of everything is better than 20% of only housing.
Sí, traduzco. Bueno, en ese 20% es mejor que el 15% esté destinado para eso, exclusivamente para eso, no el 20% para otro tipo de cosas.
No, eso es una norma nacional, el tema de la regulación de la ley del 88 es una norma nacional y que Cali tiene como adicionalmente, digamos, a esa norma que es una norma que internamente no se acuerda, le permite hacer un 15% más.
So this is just to show that part of the Cañas Gordas area looks like Atlanta. This is Atlanta in Cali.
Esta es una,
Sorry.
esta es una foto de una Google Earth de Cañas Gordas, entonces dice que es idéntico a lo que pasa en Atlanta.
Pero faltan negros. Hay una diferencia. Atlanta hay negro, acá en esa zona.
Una. Okay, so considerations for urban extensions when they have to happen. They need a system of right-of-ways, that is, of roads and streets. And this system has to include arterial roads. These are roads or streets that are large enough to have all the services to carry public transit in dedicated lanes, like a Mio. And also have enough density around them so they support a local retail, shops, grocery stores, restaurants, cafes, and so on and so forth. So how do we get this to happen in the South Extension? We need to design the new development in a way that supports all this, through density, through mixed use, and through good access, pedestrian and cycling friendly streets that will get people to not drive their cars, but walk, cycle, and use a meal.
Son recomendaciones para el funcionamiento de esas áreas de expansión. Pues se requieren unas vías, digamos, tipo 1 o tipo 2, que son las que están ahí, que tienen pues esos esto que dice 1 kilómetro de spacing o de espacio, de 100 a 150, son realmente la distancia entre paramentos que deberían haber para que estén pues, como las vías que se requieren para evacuar a toda esa gente de la zona.
Sí, como que tiene que ser lo suficientemente grandes para que el transporte urbano quede, para que haya una densidad y para juntar lo que son, obviamente, todo lo habitable, zonas comerciales y de entretenimiento. Y que se...
Tiene las vías de tipo 1, que son las vías con espacio para transporte público, con corredores exclusivos para el mío, y las vías de tipo 2, que son las internas de los barrios, cada una de un orden diferente, pues, para vehículos de tránsito liviano y velocidad. Esas son las características.
And the 1 kilometer spacing makes sense because it puts any point within the blocks at less than at about 500 meters or about from the main artery where the services are. So 500 meters is very walkable.
Es un espacio de 1 kilómetro para que haya como 500 metros que una casa no puede caminar.
Tiene que haber ese tipo de conexiones para que, para que los sistemas puedan funcionar, no solamente las vías en general, ¿no? O sea, lo que dice ahí es bicicletas, andenes, sitios para pedestrians, igual.
Carreteras diseñadas para los peatones amigables con el ciclismo.
Okay. Oh, so this is just to make a quick point about the green corridor, which is, as I said before, I think a very powerful concept to communicate the vision of a TOD city. But the roads here are very narrow and already occupied. This is, I think, like a motorway, very fast traffic, and this one is narrow. So the green corridor would be difficult to implement there. So I suggested to the planners of Cali to move the green corridor to the inside of this development.
Él muestra esto para darnos un ejemplo de cómo él cree que debería ser el corredor verde, y lo que él propone es que como para que se den las tres condiciones, pues que haya transporte público, bicicleta y peatones, que se corra un poco hacia él. No sé qué significará hacia él.
O sea, que se mete en la zona de expansión y no por donde está trazado ahora, es por la California, que una carretera que llega rápido.
So question, what about the Navarro Ciudad Calida? Is it happening? Is it not happening? I heard that they're already digging the foundation and pouring concrete, but the extension has not been approved, so question mark.
Él dice que qué pasa con Navarro Ciudad Calidad, que qué se hace, si no se hace, que se ha enterado que ya están haciendo como los cimientos para la construcción, pero que todavía no está aprobada la extensión de la misma. Entonces, una gran signo de interrogación.
The corredor verde is the alternative. This is the best way to keep Cali grow on its existing footprint. There's a lot of land along the corridor that is available for redevelopment, for densification, and a wonderful public space at the center of the city. That would be really a wonderful asset for the city.
El corredor verde es la respuesta a todo esto que estamos viendo. Pues ya es una gran posibilidad como espacio público. Tiene pues todas las posibilidades también para poder tener un proyecto de densificación.
So the concept has everything right. It's about everything that ITDP promotes: cycling, walking, the use of public transportation, making it actually difficult for drivers, for people who drive their cars alone. A vision of dense development along the corridor, densification, a variety of different buildings of fairly small size, so that's what we call fine-grained development. You see, it's not one single type of building, it's all kind of building, different uses, different income, maybe building by building, this kind of mix.
Bueno, antes la anterior, pues era, volviendo otra vez al tema de que el corredor verde debe ser amigable para los peatones, para los ciclistas, no tanto para el vehículo particular. Y en todo el concepto de urbanismo que nos acaba de decir de Fine Grain, es precisamente hacer todos estos proyectos pequeños, donde no todo es igual, sino que puedan haber diferentes tamaños y diferentes posibilidades de arquitectura.
When they presented the project, they actually used ITDP theory standard, so this made me very happy. Oh. This is ITDP. So that's the Cali planners presentation. So they embraced our principles.
Que se puso muy contento cuando vio esta presentación de la administración porque pues era ese concepto de ITDP para cambiar, apartar, mezclar, transitar, bicicleta, densificar y caminar.
This comes from a project we did for China. So, but I think it shows that it's possible to make a very attractive city that's even much denser with higher buildings.
Este es un proyecto que hicieron en China, donde se puede ver que se pueden hacer lo que se nos había hecho ahorita, diferentes cosas en una misma área, siendo esto una ciudad obviamente mucho más densa.
So every place is different, every project needs to be different, but the idea is that it can be both very mixed and fairly dense.
Que todos los proyectos son diferentes, pero se puede ver que... Ay, me perdí.
It can be mixed and dense. That's the key.
Que puede ser al mismo tiempo mixto y denso. Esa es como la clave.
A type of city that really supports walking has all these kind of amenities, very active ground floors. The ground floor is very important for the people who are in the streets. Has buildings that are near the building line, the lot line. So all these windows actually look over the street at night. It's very important for the sense of safety of people who walk in the street.
Que ya que estos proyectos se diseñan para el peatón, es muy importante que en los primeros pisos haya como este tipo de soluciones donde se pueda comer, se pueda tomar un café, porque la sensación que el primer piso que esté abierto le da la posibilidad al peatón de sentirse seguro y andar por ahí.
So the first floor for activities, but also the top floors with a mix of residents and activities, so there's people at every hour of the day.
Que al mismo tiempo como el primer piso tiene como esta dinámica, obviamente en los pisos superiores pues ahí pues hay una cosa de apartamentos, una oficina, un hotel, o sea, pues de aquí para arriba puede haber un tipo también como de actividades económicas.
Okay. However, the current conditions along the green corridor are more similar to this. So how do we go from this type to the type that we saw before? The question.
Esta es como la actual condición que hay cerca del corredor verde. Son estas edificaciones todas igualíticas. Entonces, ¿cómo pasar de eso a lo que nos acaban de mostrar de China?
So the new POT has made great steps toward promoting the TOD vision, the compact, walkable, cyclable, and transit-oriented city.
Para lograr lo que ya nos ha venido diciendo, que es ciclismo urbano, peatones y transporte público.
Yeah. For example, the new POT recommends densification along the corridors that have mass transit.
Lo ideal es densificar alrededor de los sitios donde haya transporte urbano.
Eso es lo que es el nuevo POT, está densificando estas
ya.
vías arteriales para el sistema de transporte.
And the new POT also recommends the redevelopment of a large part of the center that have potential for development, where there are land uses that have become obsolete, industrial, logistic, land uses that were attached to the railroads, but the railroads is not there anymore. So these land uses, industrial and logistic, have moved along the road to Jumbo for the most part, right? And the activity here is very low. So there's an opportunity to redevelop these factories and these warehouses into new neighborhoods for people, for mixed use.
Otra cosa que trae es como reactivar toda esta parte del centro, donde antes había bodegas y fábricas que ya tienen poco uso porque, digamos, todas las fábricas, todo el desarrollo industrial se fue para otro lugar. Entonces la idea es que esos mismos edificios que se usaban en otra época para esas industrias se puedan usar para volver a densificar la ciudad ahí.
But it's important that this redevelopment of the center of the city, all this space that is available at the center of the city, happens not like Ciudad Paraíso by doing huge projects, but happens little by little, small projects, one lot, two lots together, one block, 2 blocks maybe, but not more, never more, shouldn't.
Para identificar pues, que el tema no es hacer los grandes proyectos, sino que es hacer proyectos de escala más pequeña que involucran a la gente, no desplazan y pueden hacer uno por uno, digamos, como estaban las imágenes anteriores, que se puede ir densificando, digamos, a una altura, pero proyecto por proyecto. No haciendo grandes manzanas, pues manzana por manzana, no haciendo grandes proyectos.
I'm almost done. Yes. We have to conclude. Yeah. So currently the city is working on implementing the green corridor on this street, which is Escuela 8. Are you familiar with the project?
Yeah.
This is one section that doesn't have mass transit. However, there's a metro line, but there is, but it goes in mixed traffic. So no dedicated busway. So that's a problem. Okay, so that's my work plan. Interest to you. That's Mayor Guerrero when he was announcing the corridor, the Green Corridor project. And there's the president of the Ford Foundation that is in attendance, and I was taking the picture. And so the ideas are right. The only issue is that it takes a long time to implement projects of this nature, and it takes more than one mayor's term. So Mayor Guerrero is not going to be mayor next year. I'm counting on you to elect someone who's going to carry this on That's two.
Eres candidato.
Él está diciendo que este tipo de proyectos, pues, como tan maravillosos, no los hace un solo alcalde, que evidentemente, pues, el alcalde no va a ser el alcalde, el próximo alcalde, y que tenemos que seguir empujando este tipo de proyectos.
Y yo digo que aquí tenemos tres opciones, tres posibles candidatos a la alcaldía.
¿A quién es
En ese salón.
¿Quiénes?
Hay dos.
Dos. Bueno, Michelle no está.
Y representantes
El representante de Michelle, ¿quién más?
Date la mano.
¿Usted no va? Tres posibles candidatos a la alcaldía.
I'm sorry, no sabía, qué pena.
Se ve.
I'm sorry. Janet told me, I didn't know, perdón, qué pena, no sabía. There are three candidates for the
Mayor.
mayor. One is, what is your name, please?
Wilson Arias, del Polo de
Wilson Arias del Polo.
Carlos Rojas, Partido Verde.
Carlos Rojas del Partido Verde, and they are working for a counselor. It's called Michelle Maya. He's always helping
Que
us.
posiblemente será candidato a la alcaldía también.
That maybe he's going to be a candidate, and he's helping us every time we need something about the bicycle. He's always helping us.
So there are many opportunities to improve on the current plans and the current regulation. So when you are mayor, all of you, one or the other maybe, you have to really look into pushing this agenda of the city that is for the people, not for the cars. And that needs more than just concept. It needs working in order to improve the conditions for walking, cycling, and using the bus.
Es importante que ustedes tengan en cuenta que esto es una agenda que se debe de seguir durante mucho tiempo, que no solamente es un periodo electoral, y que si nosotros queremos que las ciudades sean para las personas y no para los carros, tenemos que seguir empujando esta idea y seguirlo durante mucho tiempo para que lo saquemos adelante.
The car, the car is an instrument of segregation, of social and spatial segregation of users. So all the work is in this part of the city, all the residences are in that part of the city, and people drive from one to the other. That's Atlanta. Not good.
What about motorcycles?
Motorcycles is always a concern. There are two ways to address motorcycles, just like cars. There are two. Well, there are more than two ways, but there are two ways. One is to clamp on parking. So you got motorcycles. You don't take your motor. You don't put it in your pocket. You don't walk to your office or to go to your job or do whatever you have to do with your. You have to park it somewhere. Motorcycles take less space than cars, but they still need space. So if you can control parking to make it illegal to park in places through enforcement, you can reduce. And then the other part is road space, and this is also valid for both cars and motorcycles. And it's harder for motorcycles, of course, because they're more agile. But if you take some of the road space and give it to buses and meal transport, and give some of it to cycles, to bicyclists, to protected bike lanes, and then some more of it to pedestrians, because there will be more and more people walking. So you need to extend the sidewalks and the walking facilities. So less asphalt for the cars and the motorcycles, more asphalt for the bicycle, or not asphalt, whatever, for the bicycles, the pedestrians, and the buses.
¿Entendieron? Transporte. Bueno, no, que una moto también necesita espacio, una moto también necesita parqueo, una moto también necesita más cantidad de voces. Entonces, que la idea es menos espacio para el carro particular, menos espacio para la moto, más espacio para los peatones, más posibilidades de espacio para las bicicletas.
And when you build bicycle ways, you need to design them well so they're protected, so they don't get invaded by the motorcycles and by the cars sometimes.
Y que cuando se diseña espacios para las bicicletas tienen que estar protegidos para que no sean invadidos por los carros y las motocicletas.
I understand that according to the data I have, and it might be old or wrong, but I saw that there was about only 10% of the trips that were done by private car. All the rest is walking, cycling, using the variety of public transportation that exists, collectivos, and so on and so forth. So this means that the part of the population that is affected by measures that restrict growth is very small. And it's usually the most powerful people. And that's a challenge. But it's still a very small population.
La gente que se verá afectada por este nuevo concepto de movilidad sostenible o de transporte es relativamente baja, probablemente es la más poderosa, pero lo importante es considerar que ellos son pocos y los demás son muchos. Entonces, invito a una pregunta.
Preguntas que hay que hacer ahorita.
Okay.
Thank you for your enjoyable
Thank you.
for the presentation as well. First, I would like to recommend that maybe it's in your documents, but also in this slide, that when you talk about self-expectation, you also include help for architectures. And I wonder how much of training architectures get in terms of health issues when they design the constructions are working infection diseases and the kind of social housing that we're having right now, very prone to airborne diseases and other kinds of diseases, and densification also affect vector-borne diseases that we haven't been able to manage here in Cali. So we have outbreaks of vector-borne disease as well, and I think that's still very important right now, and it should be more in the highlight of training architectures and the promotion of sustainable cities and housing. And my also comment was I was more interested in the social mixing, and there was a reaction, very strong reactions against it in Bogota. Maybe you heard it when the mayor was promoting this, and how you see in Cali that it would be a different reaction to it only because the DOT recommends it or deals with it, but actually it takes place and people's going to accept it. What would be the recommended research that we do right now to see how it would work? That would be the issues, political and social issues to sustain that real integration is going to happen. And no, as I was mentioning with my colleagues here, just that social housing being more by the single sons of wealthy people with density for their own sons.
Yeah. Well, I would say there's a wide literature about this, but essentially, this is a matter of values, and it's a matter of political work, and it's not a matter of really scientific research. You can perfectly imagine a very segregated city that functions technically, in terms of where things get done, and many cities like that exist already. So the issue is one of values, which is one of an integrated population where the poor are not left behind and treated in a manner that is substandard, whereas other people get better benefits from public goods and so on and so forth. This is my answer. That really you have to promote the ideas and make your voice heard in the public discourse in support of every steps, and the steps that the POT has taken are still very small. 20% of units is still a small number. It's still much lower than the percentage of the low-income people in the overall population. So it doesn't solve segregation in the larger scale, but at least it brings some mix, some social mix in the neighborhoods, which is a good thing. It has passed, the POT has been approved. The national norms require 20% of housing units to be VIP. The Cali regulation now requires that 15% of the floor area built be VIP. That's a pretty good first step. You don't think it's going to be implemented?
I think there's a video I've been saying, because there are some models already and they have been built like pilots in the city. So I think a pilot project, whether it's Ciudad Paraíso or the extension in Southeast, in telling us how integration can happen in Cali, I think it needs to be done. So they will start by a pilot and assessing how it happens. They're mixing race and income and differences and interests and lifestyles. There are some other internal issues that the history of Colombia and Cali and for this place, there are lots of very deep social issues that we need to deal with.
So you're talking about the details of design and planning in implementing these measures?
Yeah, but using that models and piloting projects, not just big policies that we have to do all the same way, but there will be some pilots where you will be able to learn more about the institution about how our history and what is the kind of culture that we have here in Cali, our environment, how we enjoy the winter, vibe, for example, all that it needs to be incorporated from within our own data, I would say.
So I know of many examples of inclusive housing policies in the US and Europe and other places. And so I can send you a list of projects that you could look at. We've done a best practice case study. It's still in the works, but I could share a draft with you of a very complex development projects in Vancouver, Canada, that was developed in a part of the city that was a bit like San Pasquale, that was degraded. So they were developed. It was very inflationary. I mean, there were all sort of pressures in every direction. The developers wanted less low-income housing, and the local groups wanted more, and so on and so forth. And the city was trying to make everybody happy. And in the end, they came up with, I think there's about 1/3 of what they call affordable housing. Some of it is very low income, some of it is just low medium. But anyway, 20, almost 30% of the units in a new development that is funded by the market forces. That's a pretty good result. So anyway, there's I can give you some examples, please.
¿Cuál ha sido la experiencia de la desertificación con relación a la calidad de vida, a la entendida, porque eso es muy amplio, pero quizá relacionado con el tema de las personas con situación de discapacidad, personas adultos mayores, la asistencia que se puede dar en casa, traslados asistenciales, es decir, todo ese movimiento que se tiene que dar de una u otra manera, y esas dinámicas se ven afectadas por la densificación, se ven beneficiadas o por el contrario el efecto es negativo.
Which is your experience?
Not very much.
Which is your experience about densification and examples like disability on this kind of urban development for other people, for assistential medical assistential, and he wants to know if this positive, the densification is positive or negative for this kind of cases.
Well, densification is all about accessibility. We want densification in order to make services more accessible without the use of cars, which is not a solution that works in the long term because of congestion. So, and also, all people, disabled people cannot drive in many cases. Some of them can, but not many can't. So, a city that is accessible by walking and cycling, wheelchairs can use the cycling facilities to some extent. Ramps are part of the walkable street design. So I strongly believe that the model of the compact, dense, mixed use, and walking and cycling oriented city is the best possible model for people with disabilities and people with some kind of impairment because of age. We see in the US, in Europe, we see a move back of aging people from the suburbs to the centers of the cities, where conditions are much more livable for them. When driving becomes a challenge for someone because of age, if they live in a suburban house, they're totally disconnected physically. Living in a city center where things can be accessed on foot is much better for them. So we see a very strong movement back from the suburbs to the city centers in many places.
La densificación es todo acerca de la accesibilidad. La idea es que toda la gente que viva todo el tema de densificación va a tener acceso a todo lo posible que tenga. En la medida en que se hace la desincentivación del carro como medio de transporte, la misma gente con discapacidad, de condición de discapacidad o gente mayor, podrá usar toda la infraestructura, ya sea en sus silla de ruedas o porque pueda caminar o lo que sea, que si tuviera que poner un carro particular o si tuviera que usar uso pues, de la carretera. Hay ejemplos en Estados Unidos y en Europa donde la gente que vivía en los suburbios de edad se fueron a vivir al centro de la ciudad donde tenían posibilidad de tener todo cerca y no tenían que estar andando en un carro particular de un lado para otro.
However, the challenge of the city, of the dense city center type, is congestion. So it's essential to combine both policies to densify urban development and to keep it compact with policies to limit the use of cars and of vehicles. So the public space can be transferred from the cars, which in many cases occupy almost all the public space, all the street, the very narrow sidewalks, to transfer this street space from the cars to the sidewalks, to the pedestrians.
Lo que hay que evitar es como el tráfico alrededor de la densificación. Entonces no solamente se necesita la densificación, sino que la densificación tiene que venir de la mano de la política pública, de la desincentivación del carro particular en este tipo de sitios donde haya este tipo de desarrollo urbano. Porque si no, no se está haciendo nada, se desincentiva, pero también se desincentiva el uso del carro particular en estas áreas.
Where can we get a copy of this?
Yes, I'll be happy to. Yeah. Do you have a flash drive?
¿Tienes una memoria?
I can send you a link. If you give me your email, I can send you this. Oh, yes.